going to be coming up on this item. And Mr. Seawood, you want to introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Report for Council, as noted, regarding direct award to Stabilization International. 3 weeks from today, we'll be before you again, seeking your direction on which option to pick on the Collier Dam remediation. During the last number of months, there's been a lot of discussion about GSI's involvement in this project and the interest in possibly having them undertake this work directly, in particular because of the speed in which they say they can do this project. So we're bringing this forward to you at this time for your consideration in anticipation of moving forward in 3 weeks with the next step in this process, which would be the selection of a remediation option.
Thank you. Do we have a speaker? A delegation. Mr. Leon King, please. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Leon Cate for 1036 Schooner Way. Just have a few questions and one concern regarding this award. Just a couple of questions from last time before the council. I asked regarding the pipe that went across the lower middle dam, regarding the permits and the seismic and engineering requirements and signing off on that, and I haven't heard anything back. So I just like to ask that question again through you to staff. Were there permits requested and approved? Is the design of the pipe crossing seismically and engineered signed off?
Your Worship, is a separate subject than what's on the agenda tonight, and certainly staff are following that up, and we'll seek to provide those responses to those questions to the delegation.
Okay. Regarding the presentation tonight, or that's before council, regarding the permits that are being sought after in this report to council that have to be included and reviewed at a later date. The question I have on that again is, what permits exactly exist right now that are in your hands, in staff's hands, in regards to what has to be further done than what you have existing? Because when the tender call was for to remove the dams, there was a whole bunch of permits that were already in place for environmental assessments, monitoring protection plan, habitat. So my question is, how much more permitting or information gathering do we have to go for it? Is this more information than what we have?
Your Worship, the permits that are going to be required for this project are dependent on what solution is chosen by council. So today, as of today, we have no permits in place for the remediation because we're not sure which solution is finally being decided by council.
The next question is, on the March 29th, there was a presentation at the lower dam in regards to GSI stabilization, and it was the Golder stabilization. The question I have is, through you to staff, what is the difference between what Golder was in discussion with the city and the city in discussion with the dam safety branch? What was okay with just them putting it forward without now GSI having to have a dam engineer oversee Golder and GSI? What was the difference between what they were going to present and go forward with? But now with the GSI stabilization proposal, there has to be a third-party engineer to approve this.
Your Worship, when the two options were originally considered by the technical committee, the dam safety section advised if overtopping was chosen as one of the options, it would require a third-party review. When we're going through that process of review up until the order was put in place, we would have still had to do that. What the order has done that came April 29th is define the actual process needed to be followed with an expert reviewing this, and that's the process we're in right now.
Okay, in spillway dam improvements, asking for the walls to be raised 1.5 meters. And I just want to question on raising the wall 1.5 meters with an overtopping option. Why are we raising the walls 1.5 meters if the overtopping is going to occur before the spillway would actually reach that height?
Your Worship, that was the original design done by Golder in during the technical committee process last year, and the major reason for it is to redirect the water that would occur in a peak maximum flood over top of the dam, but also that it wouldn't overtop the size of the spillway, and therefore the increase would have to take place as reflected on the design put in front of council a number of weeks ago.
So the question I have is, if it's overtopping, how does it raise itself up to 1.5 meters above the existing spillway? How does that water get that high when it's overtopping faster than it can rise?
Your worship, as Golder put forward previously, is the spillway will start to overtop at 35 cubic meters per second. It will maximize at 55 cubic meters per second. And the part of the reason for increasing the wall height is to account for that. It's all part of a very complex engineered design that Golder put forward to the technical committee, and we reviewed it at length at that time.
So I don't run out of time, and my last question is, we've engaged, the city has already engaged Golder to look at to address dam engineering issues. Now, being involved in the process of GSI being direct awarded this, what I'm saying is GSI needs to be totally representing themselves in this assessment. Our meeting of June 27th, this is the technical committee, June 27th, where we had a GSI presentation, and then after we had questions and answers through Golder. There's not one supporting piece from Golder on the GSI proposal. So my confusion, or the confusion I see, is if Golder is involved in the process to approve or work with them, how does that work when they're against everything? They criticized just more or less everything that was asked of them. You know, for example, anchors are used extensively by several companies, but they're not for long term. I could read this on. There's a whole bunch of questions and answers, and every one of them, from Golder to our committee, addresses that they don't support it. How does that work now that they're part of the process to work with GSI, which GSI I'm sure is going to work with them? But how does that work where they've already identified everything that is not going to work with GSI? And then the dam expert now will oversee this. How would this work if GSI is not sole sourced and in total control of what they do? This is what they do. They do erosion control. So the question I have is, how is this supposed to work when they're against everything? They make points on everything that GSI does as a product.
Your worship, as the delegation mentioned, is GSI made a presentation to the committee June 27th. They asked for Golder to sit in that meeting, GSI did, and give feedback on that. And Golder gave feedback on 4 or 5 items that they were concerned about that doesn't meet the current regulations. I've never heard Golder say they're totally against this proposal whatsoever. The concern is that GSI has said their proposal does not meet the current dam regulations. They've asked that Golder themselves and ourselves work together to make a proposal going forward to come up with a solution that the dam regulators would agree to. But that's a very hard process there because, again, this installation has not been used in Canada at all, and it's been very limited, if not used at all, in the United States in dams similar to the Collier dams. So expert reviewers, I've spoken to a couple of them, said this may be possible to get this approved, but it is a very difficult process because by GSI's own admission, they need expert to critique their product to make sure we can get it approved in the long run.
Your worship, and further to that, it certainly was an option for council to bypass using Golder and just send GSI directly to dam safety, and that's still your purview. And to the delegation's question, the challenge for GSI is, can they now design their solution for hardening of the dam, which is their component, to comply with the regulations and the design criteria that Golder believes meets the intent of dam safety regulations. So the challenge is really for GSI whether they can make their design work.
So if Golder is already having concerns about the GSI system, because you can ask questions and answers, do you consider a concrete blank with anchors was the most cost comparable? Golder responded yes, but we decided that it was more assurance with soil mixing because anchors are questionable and blocks with resistant velocities. Everything leads against them supporting GSI. How do you expect GSI to get support from Golder on what we want them to do in the finished product when there is no support here from them.
Well, Your Worship, it's not just a simple question. What Golder said is based on the proposal you heard. It doesn't meet the dam safety guidelines. What I've heard as a response from GSI as an example is that, well, maybe I can look at deeper pins and more pins to address the concerns. And that's the kind of dialogue that Golder and GSI are having and need to have to ensure that they can come up with a solution that will comply with the guidelines.
So how will council guarantee GSI's going forward as working with Golder, that they'll get full respect with Golder looking at GSI's proposal as being, applicable to this installation, this whole topic? When they have questions, they need to criticize the anchors not last time. How do we expect that to happen?
Your Worship, Council gave us direction a number of weeks ago to proceed ahead with Golder, GSI, and Herald to pursue this design as noted here. Golder has quite rightly pointed out that only soil mixing, not the proposal that GSI is proposing, works on dams over 15 meters. So under 15 meters, the GSI proposal would work. The Collier dams, or the lower Collier dam, is 23.5 meters. Therefore, it doesn't meet the regulation right off. But Golder's going to work with us and GSI to attempt to justify that the system proposed could be used in this case. As the delegation points out, it's a very tough slug to do that, but we're underway as we speak now. Golder and GSI have spoken, and they're going to speak more in this week and next to attempt to come up with a solution that works. But at the end of the day, the dam reviewer, the expert, is the one that's going to say, yes, what GSI has proposed is technically feasible. And that is related in the recommendation before you that we have to go through 3 steps before we can actually sole source directly to GSI.
And Your Worship, it would be great to have had a year to work on this and to understand the implications and to have the 2 consultants work. We're under, as everyone knows, a time constraint. So this is the best that we can do to provide an avenue for council to consider this as an option. It's my opinion that if you send Golder directly to the dam safety branch, you will fail. GSI. So this is, the only hope is that they can provide a solution that meets with Golder's design specifications in time for you to make a decision.
I don't know how many times there's one question. So what happens if the GSI comes back from the dam expert and says, no, it's not acceptable? Are we talking A and B only then?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So in closing, after reading so much documentation for the last 2 years and so much misinformation, so much overlapping information that criticizes the previous information, what I'm suggesting to council is a hydrology study of the watershed and the reservoir. Because you've heard people stand here and talk about spillway capacity, you've heard them talk about prove that rain, prove that this amount of inflow. I think we're going to make a huge mistake on picking anything when we really don't know, and it's not in any report that I've read, because it refers from one report to another report on information that was brought forward. We need to do a hydraulic study, a thorough study of that shed, that reservoir, and we really, really need to know, is it 21, 25, 35, 55, 142 cubic meters a second? I think before anybody makes a decision, you need to look at yourselves in this council and say, can I honestly make a decision that's going to cost our community $3 to $8 to $10 million? Really, support hydrology study of the watershed. I think it really needs to be done. You've heard it spoke about. I know it's kind of going backwards, but I think it's a huge key when I read information that it doesn't make itself go forward for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Receive the delegation. Motion received.
Thanks, Leon.
Seconded by Councilor Fuller. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. There's a staff recommendation that council direct staff to enter an agreement with Geostabilization International that would have them become the design build contractor for the slope stabilization portion of the lower Collery Dam remediation. Should this be the option selected by council, is determined to be technically feasible by an independent expert and is approved by the controller of water rights. Do we have a mover? Second by Councilor Bestwick. And Councilor Bestwick, go ahead.
Thank you. A question to staff simply is that by approving this recommendation,
explore and put their best solution/fix forward with a cost estimate. Is that correct?
Something that's, sorry, with this motion is that currently GSI is doing that work, putting design work together to evaluate the best option. We are not yet selected as the design build contractor, and it's anticipated if on June 1st you decide, council decides that, then they can go ahead with this. But they need to do design work in advance of the design build portion of it to even justify to the third-party reviewer that this is an acceptable process. So this is, we bring this forward to you in anticipation of that happening, but we're not there yet as per the three conditions.
And your worship, once you start down this path, you can't, if you did decide to go with an RFP process for this solution, they would be excluded because they're involved in the design work. That's why it's so important at the beginning to make them your sole contractor to build it. They have been involved, they've established a rate to be involved, a rate for their engineers. If you decide not to go with them, we'll owe them money for the work they've done to date. But if they are the successful one and you choose them, they can go ahead and build it for you because you've established them as the sole contractor.
Thank you. My second question is, should the GSI option be accepted, however that shakes out, post June 1st? Does a possibility exist that all that would be required to be done is the slope stabilization?
No. As per Councillor Kitt's presentation, there's two components to this. There's slope stabilization and there's work on the spillway dam. Two separate issues. GSI is not involved in the spillway dam work. That's Herald Engineering, who would be designing that portion as per the specs established by both.
So thank you. So with the soil hardening, and there's so many different terminologies for it, is that a first phase in many phases that would mitigate the downstream risk in the event of this potential catastrophic event when it occurs?
Your worship,
I would say if and when, but I'll just say when.
That will be determined, of course, as part of the proposal that's made to dam safety. But the way that I understand it is that all that work that's required in terms of ensuring that the overtopping is mitigated to a safety level as per the dam safety branch regulations. It includes the two things that Mr. Seward talked about. There were things in Councillor Kitt's presentation that are improvements to the park that we hope to separate out so that you can do it at a later stage, but anything that deals with safety has to be done likely up front.
And further, thank you. And when we speak to the different options for increasing the height of the spillway, will we be provided with like when I say the least expensive options, in so much as temper, like KV and basketing, or will we just simply go to a Cadillac version?
What Herald Engineer would design is as per the specs Golder established. They may have 2 or 3 different options. We're going to meet with them shortly on that. And we'll go with the least expensive one that meets the safety regulations. First blush is gabions, which are baskets filled with rocks, will not work in this case because of the erosion factor. But something like lock blocks or cast-in-place concrete would. But the challenge is to what we place on top of the existing spillway walls that would actually stay in place in a flood event. They have to be anchored down in some manner, and that's the challenge to achieve.
And Your Worship, will certainly explore the standard at which the proposals come forward. I tend to think of the Cadillac as the post-disaster mitigation plan, which was the one that everyone quotes at $30 million. That certainly is not what we're expecting to see from Golder. We're looking for the bare minimum pass the regulations, and we'll work towards that.
Thank you. Just in my last comment is, so that without the hydrology study, where we know how much water and where it's coming from, and how much water actually has to fall and travel into our dams respectively to increase the PMF to the point where we would be somewhere like a meter above our existing spillway is really challenging. If, for me, the 25 to 35, 45 to 55 PMF through that spillway, much of that information came to us without doing any work overtopping. It didn't have any soil erosion and hardening components to it. And now we're adding that, which to me minimizes the risk downstream. And we still have to, without knowing how much water it's actually going, how much water there actually is. And for me, it defies logic. It just defies logic. And so now, unfortunately, I find myself where I put in a position where I have to approve to spend money when I don't want to spend any more money, because I'm of the firm belief that this completely defies logic. Where's all this water coming from? So while I would like to think that this option by itself would solve the greater part of the problem and the risk, we're still going to be faced with millions on top of this. This hardening and stabilization will be millions. The spillway enhancements, improvements will be millions. Won't be hundreds of thousands. So we're right back to where we were with the labyrinth and the spillway, the options A and B, in dollars.
Your Worship, I'll start with Mr. Stewart can happen. That's what we advised council. That was exactly the words that came out of our mouth. We had an overtopping proposal that met the regulations that was estimated at $7 or $8 million with a $3 million contingency because of the unknowns. That's where we're at now. GSI has never provided a proposal that met the guidelines, that dealt with anything except the hardening of the dam, and didn't deal with all the other parts of the regulations in terms of how the water travels over and ends at the bottom and the spillway capacity and all those issues. So that is the challenge, and we are hoping that council has provided this direction to explore this option because you want this option to happen. And this option isn't just a hardening, it involves all the other parts of the components of the dam mitigation that we've been talking about. If you don't think that that's what you want, then please give us different direction, because we're going to come back to you with a proposal that will definitely be more expensive than $2 million because it has to comply with the regulations of dam safety and it has to address the other issues. If that's not your intent, please give us other direction.
And Your Worship, as per Councillor Besser's question, our goal is to have cost estimates for you on June 1st, in advance of that if possible. And certainly the question on the hydrology and the amount of water going through there, again, we'll repeat that most recently there's a 6th engineering firm who's done a study on this and said there is this problem with the spillway capacity. It's very proven, it's very documented that there is complete information in that regard that we have a serious safety deficiency or spillway deficiency.
Thank you. Then just to respond to that. So we have the 6th engineer that has defined and described where all this water is going to come from?
No, what they've defined is there's a safety deficiency in the spillway given the calculations that they've done and multiple other engineers have done. And there continues to be some discussion that the numbers that have been raised are not accurate. They're certainly being accurate, and they've been reinforced by other engineers, most recently by SNC Lavalin, that there's a safety deficiency that needs to be corrected.
So the safety deficiencies on the speculation that if this happens...
It's not speculation, it's...
Where's all the water coming from?
It's an engineering calculation that our engineers, Golder in this case, that worked with the technical committee, explained how those numbers were calculated. We had lots of discussion about that, but certainly that's an engineering discussion that
But Your Worship, just to bring this back to this, if council doesn't believe the engineer's reports and staff's recommendation, I'm not here to argue with you. We provide you advice, you make decisions, you direct us. We assume that you've directed us based on full knowledge of what the engineer's studies provide, that you want this to conform with dam safety regulations. We had that discussion. I didn't hear council say get a proposal that doesn't conform with dam safety regulations. That was quite clear. So if that's not your intent, please don't ask us, and when we come back with this report, be surprised with the results of it, or that it doesn't get accepted by dam safety. If this isn't your intent, give us direction.
Thank you. Can you steer me to the report that has the hydrology information that will tell me where this water is going to come from and how long it's going to have to rain for, snow for, freeze for, in order for that amount of water to enter into those two locations in order to rise high enough, in order to overflow and cause these, can you steer me to that report, please?
Your Worship, we're right back to...
No, just answer the question. Could you steer me to that report, please?
by all means, yeah.
And that is that this is a report. A point of order is in order. This is a report we're discussing on whether we're going to sole source to GSI. That should be the focus of the discussion, and any deviation from a conversation about sole sourcing to GSI is out of order, and I'd ask you to rule on that.
Councillor Bestwick, if you want more information from staff, they'll be more than happy to provide it to you. If you want to carry on this vein.
The only question I would like to ask your worship is when I will receive the information that I've requested. When will I receive
So,
the information?
Your Worship, we have provided that. Councillor Bassett, you have it.
Where is-
The challenge is that...
Well, just direct it to me, then it should be easy for you to get it back to me again.
It's not easy to understand how they come up with the calculation. We're not engineers. And we provided the reports to you, and I recognize that you probably aren't able to pick out of the reports and clarify how this specifically talks about it. But we have, like Mr. Seward said, several engineers have looked at this. Several have concluded the same issue.
Have any of the engineers concluded? And this is my only question. Just provide me with
We'll
that
provide
report
you the same
that
report.
shows me where the hydrology information is, that will establish how much water will have to be in those dams and how long it will take for it to get there.
So I'm going to
It's
rule
pretty simple.
you out of order based on the fact that that's not what we're here to discuss today. We're here to discuss whether or not we're going to provide this contract for geostabilization on a sole source.
Thank you.
It's completely irrelevant what you're asking at this point.
Well, you might think it's irrelevant, but I think that we're spending millions
You're going
and millions
all the way
upon
back to
millions.
the beginning.
Your Worship,
8 to 10 million.
We're not hiding anything. The reports are on the website. They're completely available for everyone to have a look at.
We're trying to meet some deadlines here. We're not going to go back and do hydrology reports and go back to the very beginning. Prove to me that this is going to happen. This is all about us meeting their regulations. The dams don't meet their regulations. We've got deadlines here. And proving to anybody that it meets that those numbers are accurate or not accurate, they're the